Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. I'm good. How are you doing?
Good, good.
Good. All right. Allow me to welcome architect Badrinath Kaleru. He is the principal architect at Studio Ardit. He founded the studio a decade back with an intent to design spaces that are inspired, that evolve into art, enriching the lives of the people, the users who are using that space. And I'm very excited for today's conversation. Welcome to this live session.
Thank you.
So, it's been more than a decade since you founded the studio. How has your journey been over these years?
Yes, well, it has been an interesting journey. Probably like we have been through the tougher times of the practice because we belong to a lineage where we don't come from architects' families. We started all by ourselves, and even this place where I'm practicing is was pretty new to me. I actually moved in before I started the practice, so it was like a lot of new things at a time. I think things have evolved over a period of time, and I think we are really happy to be where we are and to sail through our ship for all these years.
Right, right. So, none of us anticipated that things are going to change so quickly with digitization. The market trends are changing, the business trends are changing. So, how do you keep up with all these changing trends?
I think digitization for everybody today. I think we are living in a digital world, and digitizing it's something that we cannot avoid it. Either we get updated or we get outdated is the main. For a practice like this, we have always been a pro digital company rather than being okay. We would be the last one to do that. So we were always like probably trying to be the first one to do that in that kind of scenario. So newer technologies actually help us, at least in our kind of practice, wherein we try to do a lot of experimental work. So it is like a very good solid tool which helps us to work with our clients. It actually helps us to make our clients visualize better. Like we have been using virtual reality for past 1 2 years for some of our clients, wherein we were uh, trying to visualize things which haven't been built. For example, we were doing a large installation inside an interior space, and it was pretty tough, quite a big huge sculpture. So to visualize it, if you want the client also to take an informed decision, so taking an informed decision with the client, you also want his visualization to be at par with yours, wherein he could play an equal say, so that it might not come back to you and say that okay, probably I have visualized as something else, and this looks totally alien to me. So these kind of things, wherein it changes a perspective, and that is what it brings a new perspective and somebody who is more informed to it, and that has been possible because of technology. Like yes, architects have great visuals and they can even visualize from a sketch or even from a plan, but it is not at the same time same with probably when you're working with a structural engineer per se, or if you're working with another a contractor or trying to explain this complicacy of a design in a certain way. So many a times contractors say okay, I'll would make it, but at least explain it to me in a right way that what you want actually. So those kind of decisions are very easier when you actually bring in, like we also have a small 3D printer and we print a lot of prototypes out of it. So right from facade fins to small furniture pieces, scaled models, and they're it'll be like very interesting to see that they're actually like drawings. And once we give that small piece of object into their hands, they said, "Sir, okay, let's forget all the drawings and we'll make you the entire thing what as you asked in a certain way." So these things would actually make things quite faster. And like when we make furniture and any kind of installations, I think 3D prints and these kind of technologies are very, very makes you very empowered with compared to what conventionally we used to do with drawings. Because drawings anyway, like when there are linear, rectilinear structures, like drawings are probably the best medium. But when you actually have organic structures and quite a lot of complicated geometries, we have tried several ways. Even like 3D views only have a limitation to make the person understand to a certain point, and it doesn't for example, a chair would not justify in a drawing. You need to see the entire the how the volumes and how the curves are flowing. So when things change planes, that's when drawings, I think, would have their limitations. And probably, I think digital ways are the newer ways, and probably that would be the order of day tomorrow.
Right, right. So recently you were in masterclass with Glenn. How was your experience with about the masterclass?
It was probably one experience. I would say that if something would happen to you in a period of 15 days, and that's something that could change your life forever. So something of those kind of experience was that what I would say that I've experienced there, because Glenn as a personality, he has a very strong personality, as a very simple, humble person. But at the same time, his ideologies of space and how he explains his things, it was really like you get back to your core basics, and how like for example, I would understand how important nature is, though I would have studied it, but I would have felt it when I have seen his projects, each of them, how they respond to nature. And the whole idea of the experience was, he said, like you actually work with earth like a partner, and that's when it is like a good building is like an it's an instrument, and the orchestra is done by the nature, rather than saying that we create something very interesting. We would always say that great architecture is always discovered, it's not invented. So like a lot of things when you actually see with him were pretty amazing, and it was probably, I would say that I would always recommend younger architects, if they have an opportunity, to take something these kind of programs with Glenn or any one of the masters. But it would really change it to you to the core, and makes you very interesting, and makes you really like something that wouldn't I wouldn't probably express it the right way, but something that has changed a lot in me, and also the way that I would do my designs personally.
Right. So if we talk about any of your projects, the way that you use geometry is bold and non-repetitive. So how would you define geometry in terms of architecture?
Geometry per se, like geometry is always when you look at different geometries, and geometries have a very strong connect to like to human beings per se. They're always like every geometry, for example, a skewed angle, a sense of space. When you live, when you stand in a skewed space, it always feels like a diminishing space and an expanding space, always has its own sense of invitation, or in terms of energies, that would say. So these kind of geometries, like for us as a practice, geometries have been always been uh, very important. And this would be like if you see the works of Daniel Lipskin per se, even if you see the Jewish Museum in Berlin. So I could when you walk through those spaces, being those aisleways and different things, the kind of geometries have been used would actually the design of museum is so powerful and has a very strong impact on you, which even like the curator would have achieved a certain kind of content, but the architect would actually have created a taken the content to a very great level. So that is what geometry brings in, or it adds to a newer dimension, because we live in a world wherein we are not blessed with sites wherein say that we would be like how many times we would build a Taj Mahal, or we would have so much of foreground to build something of that. We could actually would build like a capital complex in Chandigarh, wherein you walk into the plaza and you could actually see the front facade, and then you slowly approach to the building. So those are only like once in a lifetime opportunities that anybody would get per se. I think most of us would get. So when you talk about everyday buildings and the kind of expectations clients have evolved in, like looking at the digitization, the kind of expectations, also how the clients increase with every project. So that is when we need to look back into and look at different geometries. I cannot like for example, I did a project wherein there was almost a 400 500 feet facade, but at the same time the abutting road was probably 30 to 40 feet. So I wouldn't never ever I would actually get a space wherein I could watch it from 1,000 feet away, and I could ever slowly get to it. It is the urban scenario, that is how the densities we work with. So when you look at these kind of scenarios, we need to find new ways. My building would only be viewed at 60 feet from a particular point, and that point keeps shifting. So so the most important point is the cone of vision, wherein I need to find something interesting for every set of cone of vision which is coming in that particular space, and how I could take those eyes, carry and flow them in those particular scenario, which is more important. We don't actually have the privilege to see those huge structures. So that is when we need to look at different ways and geometries per se. It is probably the need of our, wherein we could look at different and we could accentuate probably a building which is slightly at an angle, which is angled in a certain way, would makes you feel that it is more taller than what it is. So these kind of scenarios where you work with urban regulations, where everything is regulated, like probably like Corbusier would never have to had worked with the guidelines or the Chandigarh administration norms. Actually, probably he has set up his own norms, but like all the prodigy who's working right now had to work with a different frame of rules, which probably Corbusier never imagined. So when you work with those kind of rules, we need to find our own smartest, I would say, street smart ways to find our newer orders of geometry.
Right, right. So, in your opinion, when is the right time to switch from sketches to softwares? How do you incorporate softwares in your designs?
I think it is more about it's more like it varies from person to person, and like in for us, for example, in for me when I we work on so sketches and starting off with softwares are probably they would happen at the same time or they would happen in tandem, because we are not like a conventional practice where you sketch out everything or you develop everything, and softwares are only added tool to produce certain amount of drawings. So we actually work because it depends on something like a project like Timber Rhyme is has been designed digitally, evolved digitally, and fabricated digitally, and then assembled at site. So those kind of projects would actually need a different kind of intent, because end of the day it is all before the sketches. It's about the feeling of a project, how you feel in a certain space, and those kind of feelings if you can generate in your sketches and if you can translate into your drawings, very good. But at the same time, like now more and more people like work on computers and they develop soft models directly, which is also a good way. I would always never rate anything superior or inferior. There are different ways. I think one should choose a way which is more appropriate to them and should not be let down by saying that, okay, I'm not good at sketching. But if architect needs to be good visualizers, and visualizing is independent of sketching. They were connected at certain period of time where we didn't have technology. But today, I wouldn't say that, like, for example, if somebody could put on a VR goggles and develop a sculpt a particular space, why not? If you can use a space called, if you can use a program and sculpt a space or an installation, you should be allowed to do it. And at the same time, if you can design, like there are a lot of software which you can even design in virtual reality, then you should go for it. It is more about a person's comfort and where he's good at visualizing. Like Greg Len says that he always puts on HoloLens, and he does a lot of designing and how he does it, which is, and the kind of designs probably if you see Zahadi, so they're like so those kind of designs would actually have been developed in a certain way and perform in a certain way. I think like they should start and both at equal, like they were two parallels, and if one is has an affinity towards a certain way, he should always take it up rather than thinking himself that it is not a right appropriate way.
Right. So talking about the timber drawing, the project has this delicate, delicate wooden ribbon that is going through the entire space. So how was your experience of designing and executing that project?
It was like it was the point where we started when we thought that this kind of project wherein the idea was to develop a veneer store, and it was something that the need for that particular store was it was selling specialized veneers. And so wood as always has been understood as a project a material which is in more rectilinear ways and which is more solid per se, and which is not known. It is like a metal is always known for its flexural strength, but wood is more known for its compressive strength. And look, though it is known for its flexural strength, but it is not imagined in a like a ribbon kind of structure. That's kind of sleekness. So that is when we thought that if we could create a dialogue, because um, like I would say, I was reading a book of Louis Icahn wherein he said that spaces should they're not necessarily to enclose you, but at the same time they need to make provide enough reasons to create new interactions, and that is when a space justifies for itself. So this was one of the this thing wherein the ribbon structure was free flowing. It forms the table, it forms the chair, it forms a wall console. So something that keeps moving on continuously, and it is more like an immersive installation where you walk through it, where you could experience all those things. So this kind of project, it was very difficult for us to probably like first convince the client. Then it was very difficult to execute because we had to we thought of doing it, it was all sliced and cut on a predefined CNC, and it was joined on site. So it was, though there was a lot of the computer part was relatively easy, wherein we could slice off everything and do this thing. But to make a normal person understand how this puzzle would work, and every time like the we also like would actually client would come and say that was this complicacy actually needed, or was it something that can we do away with it, or is it something that has it been done before? Because this is the most like common question we actually get to listen from our clients, like has it been done before? And we were always like, okay, we try to create something, you want something to be created which was not created before, but you actually wanted something that has you have seen something that you have seen before. So this is it's like a never ending question how we try to solve it, and to always to bring them into confidence at the same time. So that's when then we like, so for example in this case we actually made a model to a client and gave it to him that this is how it will look, and he was so impressed with the model he actually took back the model with him. And that is when, and after 2 days everybody even before the project was finished, he was so excited. Anybody who asks that what is happening, he just shows the model and the person is also excited. So that is when there's a confidence that is being building up. And then there's also a lot of pressure that there is no chance of failure. So that is when we do a lot of smaller mock-ups, different ways of understanding. At the same time, even if you do a lot of homework, you need to convince the contractor to do something wherein it was not as everyday's work. So when you do it, and even for when you like these kind of scale of projects, when there are more simpler or smaller contractors you're working for them, it's like sometimes doing a wrong informed decision would actually they will lose money on the project. So that is also very important, wherein we tell them the complicacies of it. At the same time they try to work around it, and we motivate them enough wherein like we can also help them out how they can visualize it. So that is also very important. Otherwise sometimes we have seen that it's a very nice art installation, it has come out well, and the client is also very happy, but the contractor at the end of the day he has lost money in it, because probably he might have not understood the complicacy, or probably he might have over like under calculated the risk or the wastage or some particular parameters, which at the same time, because he was also an equal stakeholder, so which he also needs to be equally empowered like others. Like we cannot like build projects on contractors failures. We need to work on like contractor success as well as client success. So it's an ecosystem where that needs to function. So that is when like even in this, like we had a contractor who could actually fix those things, and we could actually convince him. We had to wait for him. So they, because there were like at least 4 contractors who said no to this, looking at the complicacy of it. So that is when we actually believe in like more simpler pieces who actually would take the risk of taking up something which is more complicated or something that they haven't done before. So those kind of attitudes needs to be inculcated in people, and that's when we could create something. Because even like for example, this project 4 to 5 years before, probably it would have been more difficult for me, not in terms of design, but to get it executed or to convince the client. But today we are in a position that we have done certain amount of projects in a certain way that client believes in us, and he does it. But way back like 5 6 years, probably it would have been more difficult. So that is when we need to push ourselves at every stage, and we also need to take our contractors and from our clients, everybody on this particular page, because the whatever the work you see, it's actually like lot of hard work of the people who are actually on the project, hard work, a lot of coordination from the contractors. So like a simpler project would take like it would take X amount of energy, but a complicated project would take three times that of energy. And that is not just at the architect's level, it's at the client's level, because client needs to be three times more patient than is patient for a simpler project. At the same time, the contractor needs to be three times more aggressive to do it or to accept mistakes from us, because mistakes are bound to happen, and he need to be in a position to accept those mistakes or from done by his people, at the same time still get going. So these kind of challenges we get when we actually do quite complicated work.
Yeah. So, Studio Ardit has been a versatile studio. You've worked with a lot of scale, the very different scales of the projects. So, what kind of complications were there that were very common while executing these projects? Or was there a particular experience or a story that you would like to share with us?
Like can you explain? It's about like different kind the complications we get in each of the project.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe something that was common in all of the kind of scales.
Like one thing which I've told you is like every time the client actually comes up with a phase wherein like we would understand that saying that though he's convinced but is not totally convinced, then say that he just wants to ask us that is it the risk that we need to take and is it necessary to do that. So that is something that we always try to work around, because that phase we see it in every project. Once we do a design proposal, design concept, he's excited about it, but the moment he asks it like is it really possible, can we actually pull it off, is the question that we come up. So that kind of journey, it's more like then you actually have to wear a cap hat of a counselor than of an architect, because that yes it will happen and it will happen in a certain way, and then you have to work out different ways to happen, because end of the day a good design is what everybody enjoys, but the path that takes you to that particular design is not a very memorable one, is a memorable one afterwards, but when you're going through that particular path, it's not like it's
It's
with thorns
frustrating.
and everything. It's not like a flowery bed that will take you to a certain point. So there are quite a lot of challenges. You would have clients with mood swings. At the same time, you would have contractors who are ready to give away the work and who doesn't want to work. So that is when, as an architect, you try to bind everything, because you know that the importance what it has does to you and what it will do afterwards, because probably you are the most informed one who could visualize that this is the thing that would happen, and it would actually be beneficial to the contractor, to the client, beneficial to the contractor that he would get a next level work of this particular kind. At the same time, client that he would, like if it is an office, the kind of appreciation he would get it from his peers. So there are a lot of fruits that it would bear, but it is only after all the hard work. So through this journey, every time, like the most difficult part is like we need to take the counseling the clients and the contractors to do that particular thing, and that is something. And even probably sometimes we have to even work with the foreman or the persons who are actually hands-on working with them to convince them, motivate them enough so that they can do it for you. Because like end of the day, like it's really it's not very easy to do when you, because every time there are set of processes we follow in terms of we develop mock-ups, but that particular risk that you would know that okay this thing has happened and probably the client will call you. This is the client call when you just pick up. You don't know like if he actually it was for a positive thing and or it was for a negative thing, is that particular second which actually lets you to pick up the call. And yes, most often than not, if it is a positive thing, like you're happy about it and you say that okay you don't want more surprises in it, but that particular journey which takes you through the entire thing, I think would be probably is common in most of the projects, because now I think it has been inculcated. When you keep doing something, it gets inculcated in you. So probably now it's like inculcated into our like clients also. When we give them a simpler option, I said like yes, we were some. I asked the client like, he said like yes, I've seen these proposals, but can we do something more exciting? He said like, do you have any feedback about all these proposals? They said like the only feedback we can say that. this doesn't look like studio RDT. That is what is the feedback. Is like we want more exciting, like they look interesting, but at the same time we want more exciting, which is because it comes from you. So that is what I think is more inspires us to push further and then to take things further.
That's very nice. It's very nice. So when we talk about lounges and bars, the way we do lighting design that can make or break the whole look and feel of the space, right? So when we're talking about lighting design, what are some common essential elements that one needs to take care of while doing the lighting design? Or if you have seen some very big mistakes that people make and you would like to share with the budding architects who have recently started working on these projects.
See, lighting, like as you said, it is like for especially for bar lounges. Most of the it is like a very like getting an appropriate lighting is I think probably a big problem that is solved because when you talk about lighting, we only take about how light works in a certain way, but we don't take about the indirect light which comes off bounced off surfaces. So sometimes we don't actually get to the reflectivity of the materials. For example, if you actually had a porcelain surface, how that particular surface to behave, because we think that okay, black matte would be black matte, but probably this surface on back, though it is a black matte, but it has a surface brilliance, which actually when there are so many of those surfaces and a lot of surfaces like even like when we talk about restaurants per se, so we need to factor in like there is a lot of crockery which is glossy, a lot of different stuffs which are glossy. So that is when we need to see the true light. And most sometimes, for example, if you're doing a nice open bar lounge where you have planned for a lot of different amazing lights, well, all of a sudden there is some particular street light which is actually disturbing you and it has taken off the entire theme that has been done, because it actually brings in a lot of unwanted light. So that is when we need to look at see spaces and try to work around with it. Um, because we plan everything on a drawing board and we see that okay, this should work in a certain way. Light especially, we have seen that most like for example in one of the bar lounges, we had to do up a complete matrix light installation, which is the main installation of the bar lounge. And it was to and we were actually had to see to bounce off an acrylic mirror, and which was hand painted with a translucent paint. So to see that surface of a bounce of a light in a mirror on a turquoise translucent acrylic mirror, which was hand painted, and in a space wherein you actually it's an open lounge. So the main part was like we can only do the light testing after when it goes dark, and because the space was started before the matrix installation was done with some basic spaces, it was furthermore challenging to get to. We had to actually literally to start our lighting programming with the programmer at 1 a.m. at night, because it was that is the time when the bar shuts down. That is the time wherein you get lot we don't actually have lot of unwanted light, and that is when we used to program the entire thing. And programming matrix, like what I know of it very bit, because we need to generate certain patterns, we generate those certain patterns, and we were more focusing on how it would evolve in a space, because when you're standing at a certain space or at the center, how I would want to flow things to flow with it, because we had a ceiling installation and we had a bar counter which need to perform, and we were doing several different kind of lighting scenes. So it was like literally I used to finish off my office, had my dinner and everything. After my family sleeps, I used to drive back to that particular place. We do the setup whole night, like for 2 3 hours, and those 3 4 days where we are doing the setup, it was pretty like it was pretty interesting at the same time, because we are doing a lot of new things. But at the same time, how like we understand that how complicated it is when you actually want to create a very interesting lighting. Because even in a certain spaces, because in some of the projects, like when lighting design say that sir, this is some unwanted light which we don't want, and but this is something that is existing. So that is when we need to see the surfaces, we need to see how it performs. So I would rather recommend that whenever we put fixtures in a bar lounge, most often than not, we need to work with, definitely one should always do mock-ups, see the smaller impact and then take it up to the scale. Don't ever assume that this particular, don't believe anybody who says that this particular works in a certain way. Do see it for yourself. Look at for when it is closer to the finishing, look those lights. Never finalize your lighting scheme, or never let your client order your lighting before you don't do the mock-ups, which is very important. At the same time, when we do mock-ups, even we do certain amount of lights, if you can actually go for some kind of dimmable lights, because you'd never know that what kind of intensity certainly you would need. Even like no lighting designer would be able to like tell you in a certain way. So we always prefer that we put lights which can be dimmable, though they don't need to be an automation, they can just be dimmable for once. But once you do that, you can actually get a certain amount of control to a light, wherein you could, based on the reflections, or sometimes if there is a we don't even factor in when there's a bar lounge, there's a huge screen. We also need to factor in the amount of light that is coming from the screen, which is not, it is just a media panel at the same time, but it itself brings in a lot of light. So that is when we need to balance out things in real sense rather than in an academic way.
Right. So you have been practicing for over 10 years. What are some important learnings that you would like to share with budding architects or designers who are just started practicing?
Like when we started initially, like as every, like probably like when we started, we didn't work with, we yes, we worked outside India but didn't work with many architects here. So we started off practice more like we jumped into the ocean and we tried to swim, that kind of scenario. So actually had to learn a lot of things the hard way than the right way. So in this scenario, I would say that like for all the designers who are coming up, like it is very important to work on what you believe, because when you start a practice, you actually get like wanted or unwanted feedback from so many people, like this is the right way or you should work in this certain way. But you from inside would know that probably this is not the right way, but you still, because saying that okay, this is the most popular thing, I need to go for it. And we most often than not get carried away into it, and then after a certain period of time we believe that probably we have not done the right thing that we need to do. So when you start a practice, like because when you start a practice, very difficult to get through, negotiate with the early years, there have been a lot of difficulties in different kinds. So that is when you don't need to lose your core self, because once you lose your core self, then you it's okay, like always client would always want an easy architect who would, so there is no harm in listening to clients. One should always be a good listener and listen to everybody and even to clients. But at the same time, good listening doesn't make you that you just follow those instructions or to do it, because end of the day what prevails is that what is right is would always be right. So even if you're gone off a project, so what is right would remain as right. So that is so when you actually build your core principles and not deviate with it and stay with it, pursue it for a longer time, that would I think would slowly become a differentiator than if you work with flow with the flow. Probably after some time there would be a point of self-realization wherein you say that okay, this I've been doing for some time, but probably this is not the right thing I need to do from right on, or I was doing it because of certain compulsions. If you keep the core strong and if you develop, if it is okay that you get less number of projects, it's okay that you work on a certain, you don't need to scale up so fast, you can actually scale up slowly. But at the same time, if you focus on your core principles, then if your foundation is strong in an architectural way, then yes, you can make some amazing structure above it. But if you weaken your foundation from beginning, then you always need to strengthen it during your course as you want to as you want to go to the next level. So rather than retrofitting your foundation, lay a good foundation, work on it so that you can actually be more, you can take it up to the next level.
We have got a couple of interesting questions from the audience who are live with us. The first one is, which one is your favorite project so far?
Uh, like like probably like every project you do, I think it's very close to you. But I don't like, if I see, for example, Pavilion is one project which was very close to me, because like architects, we work with different kind of briefs. We work with a commercial brief. We work with different kind of briefs per se. Like we have a lot of challenges in terms of addressing the area requirements or budgets or fitting in a lot of requirements. But at the same time, when you actually work with an emotional brief, so the bus was actually was like, it was a 40-year-old school, and there was a bus which was there for 15 to 20 years, and it was the first bus which they bought it, and it was bought by the father, and it was when he passed away, they bought this bus from their insurance money, which was very
So
special
it
for
was
them.
valuable. Yeah.
So even today they have a fleet of 100 buses, but that particular for the first bus was very close to their hearts. So they actually asked us to, like they were very emotional, saying that we don't want to get rid of it. Can you do something that it stays back, and can you do something out of it? So that is when we thought of, like if that is so important to them, why can't we work out something? So we wanted to make it like a quality of a temple, whereas it's more simple. At the same time, it has a very strong emotional connect, and something which is for everybody, something which invites everybody. And the decor was the interesting decor part of it was how it plays with the sun, because it's a simpler structure which has a lot of different trellis, and how it changes throughout the day is something that is probably it has I wouldn't say that we have done it, probably it happened through us, I would put it this way. But the kind of experience that when we stand at that particular place, it gives it feels you like so different. Like even probably that is one project which when I shown couple of 3 4 projects to Glenn, probably that was one project he got excited about, and he has seen a lot of about that project, and he said it's done really well. So that kind of thing, that was this special bond with it. It's like probably the smallest project which I've ever done, but probably that's the most closest project, and even it's the project which has got us like lot of top awards or something.
All right. Wow, this was a very amazing conversation. Thank you so much for giving us so many insights. I hope everybody has enjoyed our conversation as much as I have enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us here in this live session, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and expertise with me and with the audience who are live with us.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for you for having
Yeah.
me here, and
It was a
thanks a
pleasure
lot.
having you here. Yeah.
Have a
Thank
great day.
you.
Thank you.
All right. You too. All right. Bye. Bye.